In the annals of history, there are figures whose presence feels larger than life, whose actions shape the destiny of entire nations, and yet whose personal stories often remain veiled in legend and myth. Abraham Lincoln, the 16th President of the United States, is one such individual. We know him as the emancipator, as the man who steered a fractured country through its civil war, and as the president who paid the ultimate price for his convictions. But behind the familiar visage on the penny and the $5 bill lies the untold story of a man marked by adversity, compassion, and unwavering resolve. Abraham Lincoln's journey began far from the white pillars and echoing halls of the nation's capital. Born on the edge of the American frontier in Hardin County, Kentucky, in 1809, his childhood was steeped in hardship. His father, Thomas Lincoln, was a farmer and a carpenter, constantly moving the family in search of better prospects. His mother, Nancy Hanks Lincoln, died when Abe was just 9 years old, leaving his father to remarry and stitch together a blended family. The rhythm of Lincoln's early life was dictated by chores, toil, and a relentless struggle with poverty. Formal schooling was rare. By Lincoln's own estimation, the total didn't even amount to a year. But an insatiable hunger for knowledge drove the young Abraham. By candlelight, he devoured Shakespeare, the Bible, and law books borrowed from neighbors or borrowed for a precious few days from distant libraries. The lessons Lincoln learned amid hardship planted the seeds of empathy that would later define his presidency. He saw firsthand the indignities suffered by those at the margins. His earliest encounters with slavery left him profoundly unsettled. As a young man, while working on a flatboat in New Orleans, he witnessed enslaved people chained and sold at auction, an image that scorched itself into his conscience and never left him. His rise to prominence was neither swift nor smooth. Lincoln failed, repeatedly, in business. His first attempts at elected office ended in defeat. He lost more races than he won. Friends and rivals alike nicknamed him Honest Abe, not only for his integrity, but also for the candor with which he acknowledged his failures. Yet adversity seemed to harden rather than embitter him. In Illinois, he pursued law, teaching himself as he went, and forged a reputation as a witty, plain-spoken, and formidable litigator. He married Mary Todd, herself a figure of intellect and strong opinion, and together they navigated personal tragedies, most heartbreakingly the loss of 2 of their 4 children during Lincoln's lifetime. The 1850s saw America riven by debates over slavery. Each new territory, it seemed, threatened to ignite a national conflagration. Lincoln's opposition to the spread of slavery, articulated in his debates with Stephen A. Douglas and in speeches like the one at Cooper Union, made him a lightning rod in national politics. He wasn't an abolitionist from the outset, but his sense of justice grew, evolving in tandem with the nation's greatest moral crisis. When he was elected president in 1860, the Union trembled on the brink of collapse. 11 states ultimately seceded, forming the Confederacy. The enormity of what lay ahead would have flattened lesser men. Lincoln, often maligned as awkward or unrefined, summoned reserves of courage and pragmatism few knew he possessed. He kept the Union together, not with bluster, but with patience, humility, and a willingness to listen to dissent. Lincoln's path to emancipation was neither straightforward nor universally supported. He agonized over the right timing and the right words, fearing that acting too soon would lose him the support of the border states, while acting too late would render the cause meaningless. When he issued the Emancipation Proclamation in 1863, it transformed the Civil War from a battle for union into a struggle for freedom, altering the moral landscape of the country and the world. It was a document of hope, imperfect in its immediate effect, but profound in its consequences. Throughout those turbulent years, Lincoln bore personal burdens that would have crushed ordinary spirits. He endured not only the endless reports of battlefield carnage, but also relentless attacks from political foes and the deep loneliness of command. He lost his beloved son Willie during his first year in office, plunging both him and Mary into a sea of grief. Yet he sustained himself with humor, a gift for storytelling, and letters exchanged late into the night with his generals and friends. He walked the city's streets to visit wounded soldiers in hospitals. He took solace in music and poetry, seeking refuge from the persistent shadow of melancholy. By the war's end in April 1865, Lincoln had achieved what many thought impossible. The Union was preserved, and slavery, an institution as old as the Republic, was on the verge of being abolished. His second inaugural address, delivered with the war drawing to a close, was a masterpiece of humility and reconciliation. With malice toward none, with charity for all, he implored a scarred nation to unite in healing. In those lines, Lincoln revealed the scope of his vision, not as the conqueror of enemies, but as the architect of a just and merciful peace. But fate, as if intent on denying the world the fruits of his legacy, intervened. Less than a week after the Confederacy's surrender at Appomattox, Lincoln fell to an assassin's bullet in Ford's Theater. The tragedy stunned a country still reeling from years of conflict. His death was not just the loss of a president, but the loss of the very heart that had kept hope alive in the nation's darkest days. What then remains untold about Abraham Lincoln? It is easy to see him as a figure carved from marble, his story calcified into legend. Yet, his greatness lay in his humanity, his doubts, his empathy, his capacity to grow. He stood not as a perfect man, but as proof that the arc of history can bend toward justice, so long as conscience, compassion, and courage prevail. In remembering Lincoln, we honor not just the man who freed a nation, but the man who gave his life for its rebirth. His story endures, not only in monuments or textbooks, but in the striving, stumbling, ever-hopeful journey of a people determined to form a more perfect union.